You wake up on a Tuesday morning, longing for that cup of coffee. As you head to the kitchen, you hear a blaring air raid siren, and then you realize it's day 15 since the war started. Right now, we're living through the most dangerous trade war since the 1930s. Sweeping U.S. tariff increases in 2025 are upending global trade, while U.S.-China rivalry, Israel-Hamas, and Ukraine-Russia wars and geopolitical turbulence is reshaping trade routes between countries. Supply chains that took decades to build are being weaponized overnight. But here's what the experts aren't telling you. When trade wars escalate into actual wars, things can take an ugly turn. Chaos can go out of control. And even though I hate to say it, prolonged chaos and hostility can eventually lead to the possibility of World War III. The question now is, how long would your city actually survive if this economic warfare turned hot tomorrow? What we're witnessing right now isn't just economic competition. It's the prelude to something far more serious: state-based armed conflict, proxy wars, civil wars, coups, terrorism, etc. was highlighted as by far the greatest risk for 2025, according to the World Economic Forum. The current trade tensions aren't happening in a vacuum. The Trump tariffs amount to an average tax increase of nearly $1,300 per U.S. household in 2025, and direct trade between the U.S. and China and between U.S. and India may collapse. When nations start viewing economic relationships as weapons, the jump to actual conflict becomes terrifyingly small. Our cities are marvels of engineering, but they're built on the assumption that ships will keep arriving, trucks will keep moving, and the lights will stay on. When geopolitical rivals start targeting the economic lifelines that keep 330 million Americans fed and powered, the question isn't whether rising tensions could boil over. The question is, when they do, are you prepared for how fast everything unravels? Let me break down the cascade failure that happens when geopolitical conflicts move from trade wars to shooting wars, and what you can do to protect your family starting today. Your average grocery store carries about 3 days' worth of food under normal conditions, but look around that store. How much comes from overseas? The avocados from Mexico, electronics from China, fuel from unstable regions, pharmaceuticals from India. When trade wars become real wars, those supply lines don't just get expensive, they disappear. The economic warfare we're seeing now is actually the early warning system. CEOs believe intensified trade wars will be the most significant conflict-related geopolitical business risk in 2025. When business leaders are this concerned, you should be paying attention, because they're the ones who know how fragile these systems really are. The timeline for urban collapse isn't about when the bombs start falling. It's about when the economic foundation cracks. Day 1 through 3, you see panic buying as people realize their regular supply chains are disrupted. The prepared families watching this channel stay calm because they already have 30 days of food stored properly. Everyone else fights over what's left. Days 4 through 7, infrastructure systems start showing stress. Modern warfare targets economic choke points, power grids, communication networks, fuel distribution, water treatment. These aren't just military targets anymore. They're economic warfare targets. Wars and tensions pose rising threats to key shipping choke points, and when those close, the ripple effects hit every city in America. This is why your emergency plan can't just be about storing supplies. You need to think about economic resilience. When international supply chains break down, what does your family depend on that comes from overseas? Medications, electronics, even basic foods. Smart urban preppers understand that the first phase isn't about surviving bombs, it's about surviving economic isolation. 1 gallon of water per person per day, minimum. For a family of 4, that's 84 gallons for 3 weeks. But more importantly, You need to reduce your dependence on international supply chains for critical items. Food storage becomes about more than just calories. It's about reducing your exposure to supply chain weaponization, rice, beans, canned proteins from domestic sources, medications with longer shelf lives, basic tools and repair supplies that don't require international shipping to replace. The biggest mistake people make is thinking this is about foreign invasion. Modern warfare is about making your enemy defeat themselves. You don't need to occupy American cities if you can make them uninhabitable by cutting off what they need to survive. Week 2 and beyond, social cohesion becomes critical. Social instability is growing as geopolitical turmoil increases. The neighborhoods that maintain order aren't the ones with the most weapons. They're the ones with the strongest local networks and the least dependence on disrupted supply chains. Your security strategy needs to account for economic refugees, people from areas hit harder by supply disruptions moving toward areas that still have resources. This isn't about building walls. It's about building community resilience before the crisis hits. Communication becomes vital when national networks get targeted. Having local communication methods, whether HAM radio, satellite communicators, or just predetermined meeting points, keeps you from making desperate decisions based on panic and rumors. The cities that survive economic warfare aren't the biggest or the most offended. They're the ones with the most local production, the strongest community networks, and the least dependence on vulnerable international supply chains. Remember, the U.S. relationship with its trading partners could potentially influence sourcing patterns and tariff costs. But when wars start, sourcing patterns don't matter. Nothing gets sourced at all. Your job is to position your family to weather that transition while those systems either recover or get replaced with more resilient local alternatives. So let's go back to that Tuesday morning scenario. You wake up to emergency alerts, but this time, you're not panicking. While your neighbors are fighting over the last cases of bottled water, you're calmly checking your stored supplies. While they're trying to figure out what happens when the trucks stop coming, you've already shifted to local resources and community networks you built months ago. The trade tensions we're living through right now are the early warning system for something potentially much worse. The question is, are you going to use this time to prepare? Or are you going to hope that cooler heads prevail and global supply chains stay intact forever? If this breakdown scenario concerns you, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because here on the Survival Grid, we don't fear the unknown. We decode, we prepare, we survive.